giving you useful and practical tips to help you make more money selling travel. This is the Art of Selling Travel Podcast. And here to guide you through it all, your host, Glenda Beagle.
Well, Happy New Year. It is January 1st when this episode drops. And I thought, let's talk about what we're going to do in 2025 by looking back at what 2024 gave us. And so originally it was going to be I was going to call it what I'm taking from 2024 into 2025. But then I didn't think that was one. It was a really long title. But also two, then the next one was closing the chapter on 2024. And I realized, no, it's more about opening the next chapter, changing the page to the next chapter. So here's the thing. 2024 was really good to me. I got to do things that I never thought were possible. As much as, I've talked about the fact that I get to go on stages and I get to travel and do this, we hit a whole other level. In the months of September and October, I got to speak in 4 different countries on stages in front of travel advisors. I got to meet so many of the travel advisors that listen to the podcast in person and meet them and hear what they love, hear what they would rather hear more of, have conversations, and simply get rid of this virtual barrier and get back to the face-to-face. But, as with life, for all of the amazing highest highs that 24 gave me, it also gave me some lows and it gave me some lessons. And I am a huge believer that nothing is fully a failure. Unless you don't learn the lesson from it. And in which case, the universe is just going to serve that lesson back up to me again, unless I learn it. And so I had some lows, I had some lessons, and this is what I'm going to take forward in my business for 25. And I'm also going to encourage you to possibly use some of these to look forward to what you're going to take forward in 25 as well. So again, it's a matter of looking back. What in 24 worked? What worked in your business? If you're part of any of my coaching programs, you know that we start off all of our calls with what's your win? What's your win of the week? What's your win of the day? What's your win of the month? Whatever. Wins don't have to be big. See, I am a huge believer in if the win of the day is that you showed up, that you got out of bed, you need to freaking celebrate that. You have to celebrate the wins, no matter how big or how small. A friend of mine, she said it like almost 2 years ago when the podcast hit, or about a year and a half ago, when the podcast hit 5,000 downloads. And she said to me, what are you going to do to celebrate? And I kind of laughed and I was like, what are you talking about? Some people hit this in the first hour of their first episode of their first podcast. Like, I am so far behind. She goes, yeah, but look how far you've come. And she had said to me, she goes, if you don't learn how to celebrate the small ones, how will you ever know when a win is big enough to deserve a celebration? You've got to celebrate them all. And so from that time forward, I have implemented that. So in 24, we did celebrating the wins on everything. And sometimes it was, I got out of bed. Because some travel advisors, that's what they needed to hear, was from somebody else saying, I got out of bed. I've been to the conferences where you will have a travel advisor get up there and be like, OMG, it's my first year and I hit 2 million in sales. And everybody else is like, how? I've been doing it for 10 years and I haven't hit 2 million in sales. Like, how? And it gets really defeating if we don't learn how to celebrate our small wins. So when you're looking at 24, no matter how small it might be, if it worked for you, I want you to write it down. I want you to recognize it, because you can't build a momentum off of something if you never recognize the small first step that it took. Everybody talks about motivation, but motivation sucks. Motivation doesn't actually get you anywhere. It's the momentum of once you get that machine going, once you get that tire turning, once you get the wheel moving, that it gets a little easier and easier and easier. See, I used to be believer that it had to be motivation. You have to be motivated to do something. Yeah, that ended up adding to my overwhelm, and that ended up adding to all of the stress and the self-doubt and all the negativity inside. And for some people, motivation works, in which case I say congratulations, you're off to the races, keep going. But if it doesn't work for you, what is the momentum? What can you do that puts you one step further down the path today than you were yesterday? What can you do tomorrow that puts you another step further tomorrow than what you were today? You've got to figure out what that looks like. And then when you're figuring out what you're going to do differently in 25, you also got to look at what didn't work. Maybe getting out of the bed every morning worked, but that's as far as you got. So we're going to celebrate the fact that you did get out of bed every day. But now, what are you going to do to take it to the next level? What are you going to do? Maybe you have clients. Maybe you're getting referrals, but you're not getting new clients. So what are you going to do differently in 25? Are you going to change how you are putting yourself out there? How often you're putting yourself out there? How are you going to get more consistent? How are you going to do things on a more ongoing basis? Now let's get into this. Boundaries. I am letting go of, but please know that I am a constant work in progress. I am letting go of people pleasing when it busts into my boundaries. That has been a hard lesson this year. Trying to keep the peace. I've always been the peacemaker in my family. And I decided to hand over that title. I don't know who else is picking it up because nobody else seems to be, but it's no longer my problem. And I realized I had to do it because trying to keep the peace in my family, trying to keep things status quo, trying to keep everything affected my business because I didn't have the bandwidth left. And there were a couple of months throughout the year where I really, really noticed that. And maybe you're struggling with something like that. Maybe you're struggling with trying to people please for all of your clients, trying to do what your clients want, even though it's outside of what you're willing to do. I had a situation with boundaries back in January where for my mom. And, and I was at a conference and somebody called me out. They're like, just be glad you have a mom that can call you. And I don't deny that. That is a privilege that I still have, but it also doesn't lessen the frustration. Because my mom would call endlessly whenever she wanted. And I remember one very specific day in January where she called me while I was live, and it was my error for not having put my phone on airplane mode. But she called, interrupted a live. I can't remember if I was on a coaching call or doing Facebook Live. Either way, interrupted. And, as neurospicy, if you get interrupted, it's sometimes hard to get it back on track. But that's when I went and rented an office outside of my home and needed a place to go. And part of it, I remember saying to my mom, because she called, I sent it to voicemail and then I called her back and I said, what did you, actually, I started off with from these hours to these hours, this day through this day of the week, do not call. You may text, but unless it is life, limb, bleeding or dying, don't call. And what did you want? And her response was, well, nothing with that attitude. I'm like, what did you want? Yeah, the problem is that she needed to do something with her online banking app and the bank told her they couldn't do it. So she was calling me to help her. Well, I just simply said, if the bank can't help you, I can't help you. We have people in our life that don't see our boundaries, partly because we've never formally put them in place. Since then, she's been very good about texting. And I will call her back as soon as I have a moment. In fact, I saw a text come in during the last podcast I was recording, and I will deal with it when I am all done. But the thing is, though, is particularly if you're working from home, and so many travel advisors in today's world do work from home. And even half of the ones that don't work from home still struggle with this, of people not knowing that we have, quote unquote, a job, that we have work to do, which is part of what throws us off of our schedule. So putting that firm, hard boundary in place. And then it also becomes my own personal boundary that I have to keep my phone flipped over so that I don't see it flash up, because I know that the direct distractions are going to impact me. But I'm also talking about schedules with or boundaries with my own schedule. I have to follow a deadline. And I get that there are things that I can put as a deadline, but nobody else knows that it's a deadline. So really, is it that big of a deal if I miss the deadline? Yes. Yes, it is. It is a huge deal. I don't want to be staying out evenings and weekends and working and doing all of these things. I want to have that time to have downtime. I want to do my own thing. I want to keep my office in my office. I'm building out accounting breaks, travel breaks, planning breaks within my schedule, so that way I don't schedule other things during that time. And unfortunately, sometimes when we put in our boundaries, it means we actually don't have people we can share everything with. Because that was another lesson that I learned, is that not everything that I do needs to be shared with others, because they don't want to see it for the positive that it is and would rather find the negatives. So for myself, in order to have the best possible growth, I had to stop wanting other people to be happy for me. And instead, I had to be completely happy for myself. And I have things I don't share, with family members. I've built a core group of people that I am able to celebrate. Just this week, the week that I'm recording this podcast, we hit 50,000 downloads total on the podcast, which was huge. And it actually happened to be the exact same day I also hit 100 days straight of hitting my step goal without missing one. Like I have a 100-day streak. And so I have this group of women. It's from a mastermind that I'm a part of. And we get to brag in there and we get to post braggy posts. And so I posted, hey, I'm going to brag here for a minute. And I put that in there. And it wasn't just about the brag, if you will, but the way that they responded with well, of course you did that because you set your mind to it and you were so they just lifted up. One of the things that I totally love about this group was, and it came from a conversation we had one day, and somebody said, can I brag a little? And everybody went, of course, because we couldn't wait to hear what she was going to brag about. And it never, for even the slightest sliver of a split second, took away from anything anybody else was working on. I don't have that necessarily with everybody that's in my life. And yet, for some reason, I thought that they would want to celebrate it with me and they would want to lift me up. And instead, I've realized that some of those people can't actually handle when good things happen to people that aren't them. So I no longer share with them. I no longer tell them about my huge giant wins because they would rather tear it down. They would rather find fault in it. They would rather say, oh, well, if you're going to do that, then watch out for this. If you're going to have this, then, you're going to have to give up that. I just want unfiltered excitement and joy. And when I say, can I brag for a minute? Everybody go, of course. But more than anything, I want for you to have that. To the point that if you don't have that in your world, if you don't have your own little circle that you can do that, or that you like as soon as you say, can I brag a minute? And you start telling, and somebody instantly, rather than, oh my goodness, that's amazing, I can't believe it, like, I'm so excited for you, instead says, oh, better watch this. Better watch out for that. Oh, they're not going to do what they said they're going to do. Oh, you think that's a win? That's the kind of people that are around you, if you need to brag, you need to send me a DM, because I promise you, I'm going to celebrate with you, because I love to celebrate people's wins. And sometimes you just got to have that boundary in place so somebody else doesn't get to take it away from you. You know, it's sad when you realize that some people would rather you not grow because it takes something away from them somehow. You know, it has nothing to do with them. But not everybody can see that. The next thing I'm taking forward is consistency. If you've been around my world, you have heard me talk about consistency. I actually, when I was in Toronto, I put up my podcast downloads to show, it was just the graph, and it was showing the weeks that I talked about my podcast, the weeks that I didn't, weeks I sent the email, the weeks that I didn't. And the difference of downloads was at times more than 50% difference. So yes, it's great that I got really consistent on sending out my podcasts, but then I wasn't necessarily as consistent with sending out the emails to let people know what's there, because I'm like, well, they're subscribed, right? You are subscribed, aren't you? You know, do me a favor. If you're not, please go subscribe right now. But if I didn't send out the email to remind them that it was going to be there, because if you're subscribed, you open your app and boom, it downloads in. But if I didn't send the email to remind travel advisors to go and listen, the downloads were way down, like 50% down. Sales follow the consistency of emails and the growth of the podcast. The more the podcast grows, the more the sales come in. The more emails I send consistently, the more the podcast grows, which means the more the sales come in. We can create the best social media content. We can create the best podcast. We can create the best whatever. But if we don't do it consistently, we're only showing up on social media once every 3 weeks, or we're only sending out an email once in a blue moon, it doesn't matter how good it is, because people aren't going to be watching for it. People aren't going to be paying attention. They're not even going to remember who you are. You have to show up, and you have to show up consistently. Consistency also means consistency of the experience, so that whether you're this client or this client, the experience is the same, and there's a consistency across the board. The next one I'm taking is enthusiasm. Some days are simply just not as fun as others. But holding the enthusiasm for that bigger vision, that bigger why, is what's going to get you through. I remember my days when I sold travel, and you would get that micromanaging client that you just want to, like, oh, give me strength. Give me strength or give me bail money. It's one or the other. But you know, when you have a vision, it shifts everything. See, I'm on a mission to ensure that travel advisors get the support they need, because I didn't have it when I was starting out. When I built my business, having a business coach was pretty foreign. I actually hired one early on. I want to say I was like 2 years in when I hired one, and it was an investment. But this was more than a decade ago. There was hardly any online course creators. There was hardly any business coaches, almost nothing in the travel space. Now they're, on every street corner, it feels like. But I invested in that early in my business. And even at that, there was a lot of gaps missing. because the coach I had, if I remember right, had never actually run an agency, had worked just solely on the supplier side. So there were so many gaps in what their knowledge was, from what I was dealing with. And yet that was the number one reason why I decided I wanted to become a coach. Was one, I love coaching. If you ask my family, they would say it's because I love telling people what to do. The reality is, a coach is just going to ask you better questions. But for me, I want to make sure people don't feel the way I felt, that completely lost and alone and without having any idea. My road has been bumpy AF, but I figured it out and I got here. When I remember and I define my mission and I operate by those values, it helps the enthusiasm. See, there's times that I get frustrated just like anybody else, just like you do. Well, that travel advisor's not charging fees, but yet I'm charging fees, and I'll see business coaches out there. I'm like, but that coach doesn't actually know what they're talking about, or they've lied about their credentials, or they've lied about their story, or whatever it is. I just have to hold on to the vision and the mission of what I'm doing. And I stay within my values of integrity, my values of giving more than I ask. What are your values? See, when you hold on to that, it gives you this renewed enthusiasm and it lets you put the blinders on. When I was selling travel, I charged fees. I happily charged fees. And part of charging fees meant that when somebody said to me, but it's cheaper down the street, why should I pay you? And I would look at them so completely without question and say, because I freaking know my stuff and I'm freaking fabulous at what I do. And I believed it to my core. And as a business coach and as a sales trainer in the travel industry, I freaking know what I'm doing. And I know that I would never sell you something that isn't a right fit, because I work from that integrity. And with that in mind, it gives me the freedom and enthusiasm to know that I am working with the right people in the right products in the right scenarios. It's also remembering that you need to release the need to force things and instead embrace the downtime. There's been times I've had to look at my schedule and say, okay, I need to let something go out of this week because I am cooked. And I could push through. Yeah, I absolutely could. But at the same time, my option is I can take an afternoon off to reset and recharge, or with my feet in quicksand, I can be trying to shove through a block of concrete. Doesn't sound very productive, does it? See, there were years when I would think that, no, I can't give up. Like, I got to keep pushing. I got to keep pushing. I got to keep pushing. And what did I do? I freaking exhausted myself for the next day. But, taking an hour away. And when you take that hour away or that half a day or whatever it is, the number one thing to that is that you have to take away the guilt with it. And when you do that, you will be amazed at the energy that comes back with it, the enthusiasm that returns. Because otherwise, you're exhausted and you're drowning because that quicksand is swallowing you whole. Something else I'm taking forward in 25, maybe it's TMI, therapy. I will be continuing my therapy. I actually laughed. I was chatting with some in my mastermind and I said, I'm looking to invest in a new coaching program for myself this year. I don't know what that looks like. And to be honest, as of the time of this recording, I am still on the fence about which one I'm going to do. And the reason I'm on the fence is because it hasn't been like that hell yeah. So in which case, as the one coach says, then it's got to be a hell no. But I know that I am investing in myself, in my personal and professional growth in 2025. Because as I said on a previous episode, business is an inside job and you can only grow to the level at which you've allowed yourself to grow. And so I know that I'm going to continue with therapy because I see the difference. I'm also going to be looking to invest in coaching. I'm going to be doubling down and making a large investment in myself, in my professional growth and in my personal growth, because I know that there are skills that I need to improve in my business. There's skills that I possibly don't even have yet that I know would help my business. So what does that look like? I'm not entirely sure, but I have got my eye open so that when I find the right one, I'm going to do it. Leaning into fear in 24 was a game changer. I know sometimes when we come up against those fears, come up against those resistances, it's really easy to lean away from it and say, you know what, it's just not right. It's just not this. It's just this. Or, we can tell ourselves 1,000 different stories. I'm not good enough. That's for other people. They wouldn't, not for me. I'm going to be leaning into the fear rather than falling away. I'm going to be doing it. I'm going to do it scared. I'm going to be scared, but I'm going to do it anyway. And finally, numbers. I am going to know my numbers at a whole other level in 2025. I already said a couple of weeks ago or a couple months ago, I went through my calendar and I put into till the middle of 2026, I blocked out time in my calendar for accounting days, for travel days, for planning days. I am going to know my numbers at all times in 2025. I kind of let it slip partway through 2024 and I'm in the catch-up phase. So clearly we have a few more accounting days as we rounded out the new year here. But in 25, I am going to know my numbers at all times. Because when I know my numbers, not just my accounting numbers, but my stats, my conversions, everything, it's going to help me grow my business. Because again, I get to make decisions from data, not feelings, not emotions, not hunches, but genuine, honest to goodness data. I would love to know what you're going to take from 24 into 25. Shoot me a DM over on Instagram. Tell me what it is that you are going to take from 24 and into 25, what you are focused on in 2025, because this is your year. It is January freaking 1 today when this releases. Just do the dang thing and get it going. And in the event you're not listening to this on January 1st, who cares? Start today. Do not wait until some other milestone. Do not wait until the 1st of the next month or the 15th or gotta wait till next quarter. Just start. Because nothing gets going until you start. There is no magic thing that if you wait until the 1st of the month, then everything's going to be different. No, it's just a day on a calendar. Get started. And with that, we say farewell to 2024. Hello, 2025. And thank you for being a part of the Art of Selling Travel podcast. It has been my pleasure. It has been my honor to be able to show up for you here each and every week with episodes to help you grow your travel business. If there is an episode you would like to hear in 2025 or beyond, please send me a DM over on Instagram. I'm going to link it all up in the show notes. Make sure you come and join our Facebook community. And until next time, happy selling.